The vision very early was quite clear. We actually, in the early days, when we had the office at home, we put up a whiteboard on the wall and we wrote the vision at the very top. We said, Ireland's biggest classifieds website. That was a vision. And I kind of felt that that's a great vision. When I read that, it gives me energy. I go, I'd love to reach that.
The Architects of Business on JOE, in partnership with the EY Entrepreneur of the Year programme, telling the inspirational stories behind Ireland's most successful entrepreneurs.
Hello and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Architects of Business on JOE, in partnership with EY Entrepreneur of the Year, where you will hear the inspirational stories behind some of Ireland's most successful entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Sonya Lennon, and today I will be speaking with Fred Karlsson, founder of online marketplace sensation DoneDeal. The company started in May 2005 when Fred and his Irish wife Geraldine moved back from Sweden. It started out as a weekend gig, but soon grew into the most important classified website in Ireland. Fred Karlsson, thank you so much for joining us today on Architects of Business.
Thank you, Sonia.
Your story is fantastic. I'm already excited to go through it, but what I always like to do is to start at the beginning. So despite your very convincing Irish accent at this stage, your story didn't start here. So tell us a little bit about growing up in Sweden and what formed the Fred that we see today.
I mean, I lived in Sweden until I was, 25 or something like that.
And you were born there?
Yeah, for sure. And grew up there and had no intentions of moving anywhere else. I loved Sweden. Sweden is a great place in many ways. I grew up in a small town in Sweden, right in the middle, right in between Malmö and Stockholm actually, but near to nowhere. It's like 3 hours, 3 hours right in between them, but 3 hours from either one. So you never really saw Stockholm or the big cities in. So I grew up, I'm a really small town boy, and it was a great town to grow up in, loads of friends, easy to get around, you cycle everywhere, safe, all that kind of stuff. And as I grew up, I quickly got into computers. I started writing computer games and selling computer games with a friend when I was 14.
And where did that come from?
I don't know, I think I was always into building things, engineering kind of.
Yeah.
My dad kind of has an engineering background, and so I was always into the making of things. And then when these computers came out and you could make stuff by just writing code, and suddenly a little blip popped up on the screen and you could move it and stuff, I was going, this is fascinating. You can do so much that is visual very quickly. And I just got hooked, and I had a friend as well who also was into it, so we bought the same type of computer and we wrote the games together, and it helps when there's two of you.
Big time.
If it was only me, you'd probably get bored at that age, very quickly, but two of us, I remember even we sold a game and we made the equivalent of 80 euros a time, which was huge money for us.
Massive. So you were what, 15, 16?
14 at the time.
14
at
the
time. For the first game. And now, then we lost interest in that. We still kept writing a little bit of games and stuff, but we never got into scaling it up in any way. It was just kept a hobby until then I joined. When I went to university, I decided, okay, let's actually study this a little bit and see how to actually do it, how to do it for real. And I ended up studying 2 years of computer science in university, and then I said, well, this is all very interesting, but to me, the magic is not just about the technology, it's about when the technology meets the other sides of life. So I decided I need to broaden my mind a little bit. So I studied a year of HR management and a year of finance.
HR management and finance.
Yeah.
They seem like unlikely bedfellows for a technologist.
Yeah, and I think that was a little bit of the point. I was always fascinated by psychology. As well, how people think and how the brain works. And HR management, this was kind of a HR/psychology course. It's kind of a mishmash of it. So I think I actually went into it more for the psychology, not realizing there was actually a lot of focus on more kind of corporate psychology and how do you use psychology in the HR context. But it ended up being really great because it was much more about how do you actually work with people, not just analysing one person and their problems, but more about how do you develop people, how do you, what does good leadership look like, what does it mean?
And we will definitely talk a little bit more about that because I love your philosophy around that. But what I'm interested in is, at that point, having done your 2 years of computer science, were you already thinking about business and how these other strands could round you out as a businessman?
I don't think so. No, that's way too...
That's retrofitting.
Yeah, exactly. It was more about, you have a curious mind. As a student, you have a curious mind. You want to learn stuff. And so I said, I want to learn something else. I've learned a good bit of computers. Not that I'm a total expert at it, but I want to see other stuff. What does that, what do the other people do? Because you talk to all these other students and you can very often see the difference between the law student versus the IT nerd versus, the college student. They look different, they talk different. And I was always fascinated by that difference. And I said, geez, I want a piece of that and I want a piece of that. And
do you see that as unusual? Because I see it as unusual. And I think the reason that those student groups look different is because they do tend to silo themselves in one unit. So what you did in kind of dipping a foot into other waters, it is quite an unusual thing to do, I think.
It probably is. It wasn't to me.
Yeah.
At the time, you're a student, you don't think that whole much about what you do. You jump on things, jump on opportunities and stuff. So there was no grand plan behind it. But yeah, I guess it is unusual, yeah.
And I'm going to ask the question, I don't know how valid it is, but do you think that the learning culture and the educational system in Sweden perhaps facilitated that a little bit more?
From what I've heard from my wife, she's Irish, I do believe we grew up with very proactive teachers and a school system that, enticed you to go out and learn stuff yourself, rather than trying to just recite stuff. I get the feeling that the Irish system, at least then, was very much about you learn for the test. That was it. While the Swedish, at least our school, was very much set up about, you need to learn certain things, but then we want you to go off and explore this stuff and explore that stuff.
Learning.
Yeah, and we had a very good chemistry teacher who gave us access to the chemistry lab outside hours, and most of the time we did decent stuff, and sometimes you do.
And yet endless possibilities for chaos.
Yeah, exactly. There was a few fire accidents and things like that.
I bet there was. So you mentioned Geraldine, your wife. How did you two come to meet?
We met in Dublin. So I came over to Ireland in '97. My idea, this is just out of college, and my idea was let's move abroad for a little while, just to see some other culture, work a little bit. My plan was basically to be in Ireland for 6 months. And I've been here now for 18 years.
Okay.
So the 6 months have got extended a tiny bit. So
okay.
We're still working on that. So I came over, and the reason I came to Dublin, again, it wasn't any major plan. I was into IT, I could get a job in IT, and Irish companies at the time, this company, I don't know if you remember them, Gateway 2000. Mm-hmm. They're up close to the airport.
That's right.
And they make computers a bit like Dell.
Yes.
And they were recruiting people, Swedish people, to their customer support in Dublin. So they came over to Sweden and interviewed in Sweden. They paid for the flight over, they paid for moving a few boxes over, they arranged a place to stay the first month, they set up my bank account, they did all the tax registration. So it's just easy. And you come out as a student, someone offers you, come over and work with us.
See how it works out.
For a while, and we pay for it. And you go, yeah, of course, I'm on. And I came over, and obviously I liked the place so much that I ended up staying for much longer.
Yes.
At the time, I met my wife 2 years after I moved to Dublin. And at the time, I was kind of almost ready to move because Ireland is a great place. I love Ireland. I wouldn't stay here otherwise this long. It's a great place, great people. It doesn't really have the weather though, to be honest.
Okay, fair enough, Fred. Can't argue there.
Yeah. So you start missing the like Sweden gets cold winters and warm summers. We get a few.
You start missing a climate, basically.
Yeah, 4 seasons.
Yes.
Not just the one that is tiny bit warmer, tiny bit colder. And so I was here for 2 years, and I was just about thinking of moving somewhere. And I met Geraldine, and I said, I'll stay around for a little while and see where this is going. And,
Temperate climate's not so bad
yeah,
after all.
exactly. But then about 6 months in, I remember I was in town in Dublin, and it was the middle of July, and it was pouring rain, and it was 12 degrees and really windy, and it was just really, really cold and miserable. And I'm looking over to the side of the street, and there's a big poster ad for Coca-Cola, and it says, "Summer is here." And there's all these people playing beach volleyball in shorts and bathing suits and stuff. And I was going, yeah, it doesn't get much more summer than this. And here I am, freezing. So I went back to Geraldine and said, I know we're not going out a long time, but I think we might have to move somewhere for a little while. And it was too early to move to Sweden.
Okay.
The relationship wasn't at that stage, because that's a big thing to move to someone else's country.
That's about the balance of power, really, at that stage,
exactly.
isn't it?
So that wasn't flying. And I wasn't even pushing for it. I knew that's not on. So we decided to move to Australia. Neutral ground, English speaking, easy to get job. She's into IT as well. So we decided, let's try.
Did you meet in Gateway? No.
No, I'd moved to another company by then, called Dretec at the time. But we actually met through a colleague.
Okay.
A friend of hers was matchmaking her heavily in the office to anything.
Successfully. Eventually.
I wasn't targeted anything. But so obviously, she came along to the wedding. Her friend came along to the wedding. She was delighted with herself there.
Very good.
But anyway, so we moved to Australia for a while. It was easy as an IT person. We're very, very lucky. It's so easy to get a job anywhere you go. So we worked there for a few months, travelled around for a while, travelled around Southeast Asia, moved back to Europe. But by that stage, we said, okay, let's go for Sweden this time.
Okay.
So we lived in Sweden for a few years, worked there, and we got married in Sweden. And a couple of months after the marriage, we moved to Ireland. Now, it was planned before. The plan was to move back to Ireland for a while.
How did she persuade you to move back?
Well, very clever, because I was still living this dream of, we're jet setters. We move from country to country. We work a little bit in Australia. We work a little bit here.
Nomadic technologists.
And by the time we came to the age where, okay, now it's time to settle down, we happened to be in Ireland.
Convenient, Geraldine.
She did very well. And the worst part is she almost made me feel it's my idea to be there. So
clever.
She's very good. Yeah.
Is she the strategist in the business?
For sure, by far. Oh,
Excellent.
No comparison.
Excellent. So you did start a business together.
Yes. So when we come back from Sweden, we lived in Sweden. We had an apartment full of IKEA furniture, as you do, and we had to get rid of that when we moved. So we sold that on a website that is very, very similar to DoneDeal, a Swedish website. And then we came back to Ireland, and this was in the end of 2004. And we were on the other side of the fence where we wanted to buy second-hand furniture, and we realised there wasn't a good website. Ireland was still stuck with, the little ads in the back of the magazine or the buy and sell paper. Yeah, and it says blue 3-seater sofa. And you go, I have no idea what it looks like. How am I supposed to buy that? While on the Swedish site, it was all about the photos. You could see the sofa. You knew exactly what style it was. You knew if it would suit your home. So we said this is magic. Like, this exists in Sweden. We found really good. It's not in Ireland yet. It's going to come to Ireland for sure. And maybe, just maybe, that can be us who do that.
So you're at a point where you have an idea that you know already works. You have a clear market. What happened next?
Well, the first step is to actually build a website. Now, our challenge is that we've been moving around a lot, so we don't have any money saved. So we both have daytime jobs in IT in Dublin, and we started to develop the website on the evenings and the weekends. Actually, the first thing is to think about, one of the first things is to think about a name for the company, because the Swedish name translates to notepad.
Okay.
It's kind of, silly, stupid sounding, it's not, doesn't have any energy. So we had to come up with a name, and we did a great deal of research, a very structured process that is called one bottle of wine in an evening. We basically sat down with a bottle of wine.
Facilitation.
But it's a very, very exact process, You sit down with a bottle of wine, and then you write down all the ideas that come up. And then the day after, you try to decipher what you were writing. And the words doing a deal or dealing and done deal came up, and we just went for the name. DoneDeal.
So there's dual ownership on the name.
Definitely, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're not sure who said what
Very
towards the end
good.
there.
Very good. And what at that stage was your vision for it?
The vision very early was quite clear. We actually, in the early days, when we had the office at home, we put up a whiteboard on the wall and we wrote the vision at the very top. We said, Ireland's biggest classifieds website. That was a vision. And I kind of felt that that's a great vision. When I read that, it gives me energy. I go, I'd love to reach that. If we can reach that, that would be fantastic. So it gave a lot of energy. But I also want to qualify a little bit, what does that mean? Because biggest is a bit, being a nerd, I like numbers. It has to be numberized. You can't measure biggest because it can be biggest in different ways. So underneath we said by number of users, by number of ads, and by number of items sold. We said, okay, this is how we measure that. We have to be the biggest. We have to have most users on the website. It's the first thing. And then the number of things being sold on the website. So
it's beautifully clear though, Fred. And it's actually,
it worked well.
It's one of the things, having been surrounded by founders and business people and startups, that sort of clarity is, again, probably more rare than you realise. To have the vision for the company and the metrics by which to capture that is a beautiful thing. Yeah,
I've realised in hindsight again that it was very powerful. It helped because top line gave me energy and the other one gives focus.
Structure.
Because there was several times, so I did most of the development on the website and my wife was the project manager basically. We met every Saturday. We'd go down to the local cafe and we have our project meeting. We have a cup of coffee and a project meeting. And I basically tell her, last week I did this, and next week I'm planning to do this. And she'd often then say, I don't think you should do that. Because what I wanted to do, because I was a techie.
And that's not the coffee I wanted.
Exactly. No, but she was very good at helping us stay focused on the right thing. Because as a techie, it's very easy to want to do the stuff that is really cool technically.
Yes.
But that is the stuff that most people can't use.
Yes.
So we need, because our top line was, our first metric was by number of users. We had to do websites that everyone could use.
Yes.
And keep in mind, this is 2005. Most people, like the internet penetration was only 30% of the population actually used the internet at all. And most websites were quite complicated to use. And there was different browser versions and different, if you had a certain browser, you couldn't use a website and all this kind of stuff. So we had to have a website that worked in all types of different browsers. Democratic
platform.
Yeah, which is terrible as a techie because you don't get to do the cool stuff. The cool stuff is in the new browsers, in the new technologies. But we had to focus on the stuff that worked for everyone. And it was great, in hindsight, that we kept that focus because otherwise I would have gone off on a techie tangent and done something that was really technically cool, but no one or very few people could actually use it.
So the value of everything was its simplicity.
Yeah, for sure. The main goal was that, like, we had and this is for years in DoneDeal, we had a thing, I call it the mother-in-law test. So when we developed something new on the website, a new feature, something, before we went live with it, we put it up in the conference room and we all looked at it and said, and I pictured my mother-in-law sitting in front of a computer.
What's your mother-in-law's name?
Mary.
Mary. Have to give a shout out to Mary.
Yeah, she's been a big part of it. And I tried to picture her sitting in front of the screen, looking at this, using it. And if I saw her being confused by it, if she was going, I'm not sure what this does, then we'd have to scrap it and go back to redesign it again because it wasn't good enough. Because the goal was to always get everyone on the platform.
So how long did it take between the germ of the idea, the bottle of wine, the name, the domain purchase, and go live?
So we came back to Ireland in end of 2004. We started programming probably January 2005, launched in June 2005. Keep in mind that we still had our daytime jobs, and it was a year and a half before I left my daytime job. So we ran this in the weekends and the evenings. So it took 6 months to go live. We were lucky at that time, it was still, this 2005, it was still a big deal when a new website was launched. So our first marketing push...
It's hard to even sort of register that now, that would have been a thing, right?
Yeah. Our first marketing thing was just to send an email to all our friends and say, we launched a website. And they because it was quite a big deal, they sent it to everyone, all of their friends. So we got a bit of traction just from sending one email like that.
Amazing.
Which is unheard of these days, you know. That's,
Yes.
The next step on our marketing then was Google.
Yeah.
Google AdWords had just launched into Ireland, and there was no one else on the platform at the time. So we had free reign. We could buy all these clicks for next to nothing. I remember at the time we got clicks for down to 1 cent per click. These days you're talking not cents, you're talking euros.
Yes.
For anything. And we got I think the average price for our clicks were 3 cents. A lot of them were 1 cent per click. Like, it was amazing, brilliant time for marketing online. You know, we got away with a lot for that.
And so you mentioned that it was a year and a half before you left your full-time job. What was the impetus around that? What made you believe that you had it?
Well, it's very scary, you know, to leave your job. So it's also, you know, myself and Geraldine, we had a family. We had, you know, we were looking at getting a mortgage and all this kind of stuff. So it's not only about me anymore. You have to
Grown up
two
things.
of us. Yeah, exactly. It's very trying to be mature. You know, play mature.
It does sometimes feel like playing it, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you wing it. You have no idea, right?
Absolutely.
You just make it up. And so we had said basically, we have to have a feeling that this can actually make money, because you know in the early days, when we launched first, it was free to put up ads, so
Yeah.
the site wasn't making any money at all.
And did you have the model in mind at that stage to transition to
Paid
a
ad.
paid ad?
Yeah, for sure. That was because we based this on the Swedish website.
Gotcha.
And on the Swedish website, you paid the equivalent of two euros to put up your ad.
Very good.
So that was always the idea. But we said in the beginning, to get the numbers up,
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have it free so you get a number of ads.
Yeah.
Because keep in mind, our site, as much as I love the technology that, you know, the website that I wrote, our business was not about the website. It's about the ads that are on the website. It's about all the stuff that goes on. It's not about the technology. So a big challenge for that is when you launch a website like ours, if there's nothing for sale on the website, it's a really crappy website. It doesn't matter.
And actually, to this day, content is everything.
Content is
and
king,
even
right?
more so now. So yeah, I totally get that.
So we're there on launch day and we're going, what are we going to do? We can't launch this. You know, if you look at this,
There's
just
nothing
an
on
empty
it.
page. Yeah, what's people are going to go to it and they go, this is rubbish. So we went around the house and
Can you remember your first ad?
Well, what we did was we had to fill up with something. And we had to make it look like there was, you know, people from kind of all over Ireland selling on this website.
What did you sell, Fred?
So we went around the house and took a photo of every piece of item in the house, of sofas, chairs, tables, TVs, everything. Put it up on the website.
How many profiles did you set up?
We had a lot, yeah. Well, I think it was about 60 items on the website, and they're all being sold in different parts of the country and different names and different. But then there was one thing. I had put my brother-in-law's bicycle that I borrowed to get around in Dublin. I put that up on the website, and for some reason I put that with my phone number on it. So people kept calling, actually wanting to buy this bicycle.
Hilarious.
And obviously I can't sell my brother-in-law's bicycle, so I
Because
keep
you
telling
do have a soul at the end of the day.
well, you know, I have to meet him at funerals and weddings and all that, you know. So I had to tell them, no, it's been sold, I'm taking it down now. But I want to keep it up, obviously, on the website to make it...
You needed the content.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a few weeks there where it was a bit hairy. But then other people started putting up stuff on the website and we could take down our things. That was a great feeling, yeah.
Amazing. Oh, my goodness. And so one of the biggest challenges that you faced in this wonderful vision of yours was getting the people to fuel the growth. Once you started to grow, you had to set up a technology hub in rural Wexford.
Yeah. Yeah, so we moved down to Wexford shortly after we launched the website, and that's where it always grew out of. And it's a big challenge it's a big step in. So I went full-time first. A year later, my wife went full-time, and then we said, okay, now it's time to hire our first team member. And it was a big thing then because we...
And let me just get the chronology of this then right. You were full-time at this stage. Your traction point had hit. What was that traction point? I'm trying to think back over the conversation because I think we rambled around a good bit. What was the moment where you thought, this is it?
Well, when I went full-time, the goal was that I could pay myself a small bit of salary.
Yes.
that, and we still had a little bit to marketing. So I
Yes.
took out a salary of 500 euros a month, I think,
Yeah.
was the goal. And once we made enough money on the website that I could take that salary, 500 a month,
Yeah.
and we still had a bit left over to marketing, I went full time.
Fantastic.
And then a similar setup then for when Geraldine, when Geraldine went full time, we had to have a little bit more decent salaries because we had to be able to pay for ourselves. And then, we started to make money, and we said, okay, we can probably now afford an employee, and we need to get an office at the same time then, because we couldn't really have, until then we were sitting at home in an office, but it would feel weird to have third person sitting there in this tiny little bedroom,
That's it.
So we said, no, we can. But now, in hindsight, this was a great time to launch something, because, so we're moving into the office in 2009. The recession has hit. There's loads of offices for next to nothing available. So we found there's a lovely office for very small money that suited us perfectly. So it was great in that way. If we had tried to do that 2 years before, the cost of the office would have been very, very different.
Was it Winston Churchill, is it never waste a good crisis?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And presumably then you benefited from, really good quality employees for the same reason.
Yeah, exactly. There's loads of people who were out of a job for not for their fault, but just because of the recession. And keep in mind, the recession also helped us in that when we started DoneDeal in 2005, I always thought it was the furniture section that was going to take off first, because that's the one we had used back in Sweden. And I was pushing the furniture section, but it just never really took off. This was in 2005, 2006, 2007. No one, in hindsight, no one in Ireland would be seen buying and selling second-hand furniture at that time. If you bought a new sofa, you threw out the old one. You couldn't sell it because that was just not on, And then suddenly when recession hits, all this furniture starts to show up on the website. And I remember one section on the website was great as well to see. You could see the recession hitting. It was the jacuzzi section. Suddenly one day it was just loads of hot tubs and jacuzzis on the website, and you knew this is people who overspent their time and they need to cut back. So it's obviously very sad to see it, but for it was great timing for us that suddenly there was an influx of stuff being bought and sold, and it became fashionable to buy and sell second-hand stuff. So that really helped DoneDeal to grow.
So in a way, DoneDeal is an economic indicator. It tells you what the minds of the people are thinking.
You can definitely see trends going. What's fashionable, what's not fashionable, what's on, and what's a level of spend in the country. Definitely.
Fred, you have built one of the most successful selling platforms, but you've done so much more. You have made, I suppose, the ultimate sale. That platform has now been sold. We're going to take a little break and come back and talk about that. So all of a sudden you find yourself with a burgeoning young business in Wexford, a staff, and the beginnings of a very serious company. You had your psychology and your HR background through your studies. How did you begin to mould this living organism into what you wanted it to be?
Well, we always had in mind that both myself and Geraldine have worked in a number of different companies, and you can feel how the culture of a company makes a huge difference for the people working there, and how productive they are, and how much, how good their lives are. So both myself and Geraldine were very focused that when we were starting to grow the company, that we build the culture right from day one. And for all my studies and all that, I knew it was important, but I didn't really know what to do about it. And thankfully, Geraldine was there. She's the one. I'm not going to take any credit for all. I think we built a very good culture in DoneDeal. It's not thanks to me, it's thanks to Geraldine. She was the driver. I understood how important it was, and I support everything she did to a certain extent. Actually, I'll have to tell you about that. So one of the things we do in the company from day one was, Geraldine said, we're going to have a joint coffee break at 10:30 every day. Everyone in the company has to get down to the kitchen, have a cup of coffee and have a chat. That's the rule. And I said, oh yeah, that's great. I love that culture. But then first day comes along and we sit there and 10:30 comes along. Of course, I think I'm way too important and way too busy to go down and have coffee right now because I'm doing important stuff. So I'm sitting there and Geraldine comes over and pulls me by the ear and says, no, the rule is we're having coffee. And I said, this is stupid idea. We can't have this. But it only took me a few days before I realized this is the best thing ever. Because suddenly you have 15 minutes on a day where you build a different type of relationship with your colleagues. And you get to know them on a personal level. You get to know their families, their kids, their grandparents, the good things in life, the bad things in life. And you have a very different relationship then, and it makes it much easier to work together in everything else. And even now, looking in hindsight as well, so for building that culture, it was a great team building experience that you did it every day and there was no excuse. And as a leader, as a founder of the company, whatever you do sets the tone. That sets the culture. So
you
if
can't make a rule, put it on the wall and expect everybody to follow it unless you're doing it.
Exactly. So once I realised that, this is important, and it's actually great as well, because it means that you work very focused up until 10:30, because at 10:30 I'll have a great break. And then after the break, you've had a great chat and you're back to work again. Otherwise, it's very easy to work an hour and then you dip into the kitchen for a while and then you dip out and you talk to someone on the way, but then you don't. It gets very, this way it got very, very focused. So that was one of the best things we ever did, and the company still does that today, and it's really nice. Now,
there are other beautiful initiatives that you put in place, though.
Another thing we had very early on was something we called Frigging Great Ideas Friday. So every Friday...
Is that the sanitized podcast version now, or is that what it was actually called?
No, that was it. Yeah. No, this was in the company handbook. It said Frigging Great Ideas Friday. Everyone had to show up in the afternoon, Friday afternoon. We meet, and everyone has to bring one idea of something we could improve, whether it's on the product on the website, or if it's in the office, put a plant in the office, or change a coffee brand that we use, or anything that just made a small improvement. And then if they were feasible, we'd implement them. And in the beginning, that's very easy, because it's nice to have a plant over there, and maybe we'll have a plant over there, and then we change the coffee brand, and then we do a few things like that. And all those things make for a really nice working environment. It costs next to nothing to buy a little plant.
But your people feel invested in it then as well.
And they realise that it's up to them actually to come with the ideas. And very often, if they come with the idea, we gave the person then, here's €50, go down to the flower shop, get a plant.
Yeah.
It's your job to do it.
Yeah.
So we just encourage it. But also what happens is, after a few months, the ideas are not so easy anymore, because we have a plant there, and we have a plant there, and we have a good coffee brand, and we have all those easy ones are gone. And suddenly you get to a stage where in the Friday morning, everyone sits down and go, do you have something for the Frigging Great Ideas Friday? No, I don't. Try and steal each other ideas and stuff as well. And that's when you really realise that you start to push yourself a little bit. And that's when the really good ideas come out.
Brilliant.
Because the easy ones are done, but now it's more complex ones. But I think that set the tone of that we want to continuously improve. Even the small stuff, the small things are very, very important. I think that was always important. Now, once you get to a certain size, you can't do that with everyone.
Yeah.
So we had to stop it after a while. But I think it set a tone for the first few years and for the growth of the company. And
I think you also implemented an initiative to give a percentage of profits.
Yeah, we did that very early on. We call it Charity Month. We said the company was doing well, so we said we need to do something here to give back to the community. And we said we wanted to be not the company giving money back to the community. We wanted to be the staff, the team, from them personally, not from me as a founder of DoneDeal, but from everyone. So we set in place this routine that every second month we take 5% of the turnover basically, and we allocate that to charity. And then we rotate who got to give money to their charity.
Beautiful.
So each month, so I was on the roster like everyone else. So 1 month it was my turn. So I would have to go to the charity, talk to them and say, I'd like to give you some money at the end of the month here, but I want to get a few photos. It's not all about money, it's about promoting you on the website as well. We write about you, we blog about you. But I had to write the blog post. I had to get the photos. It was about my job. And then at the end of the month, we knew how much money we'd made, and I got a check, and I go down to the charity again. I give them the check, and I get a handshake, and I get a few more photos and write about it again on the blog. So it was really about getting each person to do that bit.
Fantastic.
To make them feel it was them giving the money. It wasn't the DoneDeal giving money.
Fantastic.
It was them. And I think it really made a difference. And just to finish off, a big thing of that was it was great, and it really helped us, I think, keep staff happy or keep staff in the company, and they all felt part of the community. But we reached a really big milestone right at the end when we sold the company. Just before we left the company, we'd reached €1 million in donations, and it was a really nice feeling to do that just before we left the company.
That is fantastic. Fantastic.
Hopefully it made an impact.
Definitely, definitely. The sense of the partnership that yourself and Geraldine have is very strong. and from the get-go, your roles seem to have been very clearly defined. Is that right to say that?
Obviously, there's a time there when we were finding our roles, but yeah, I think in the big picture, we did find our roles very.
So, in business
quickly.
terms, then, explain that to me.
In the early days, she was a project manager. I was a techie, and then she took over marketing. I was became more product manager maybe. And then I was more on the hands-on programming side.
Yeah.
She was more on the managing, she was looked after the culture, she looked after marketing. So we we knew each other. We've been married for a few years, so we knew each other quite well, so we could play to each other's strengths. But obviously, yeah, there'll be times when you drive each other mad as well, but that's
life.
That's life. That's marriage in any,
And how did the organisation structure itself then in terms of did you have an advisory board? Did you have a board of directors? How did it grow?
We never got we had a few advisors that we pulled on every now and then for ideas and for questions. So people like friends from previous jobs and things like that helped us out. We also very quickly got in place, so I think our 5th hire in the company was a COO. So first we hired some customer support staff, another techie, but then we quickly hired a COO, as Chief Operations Officer,
Yes.
someone to actually help run the company.
Yes.
And he was actually a boss, he was my boss in a previous job. So I knew he was a good boss, a good person to work under. He was a good manager. He would help you as a techie, shelter you from all the distractions around. And then we'd always we got along very well when we worked together. And then suddenly when we needed someone to basically manage the company, I said, this guy is a perfect match. So we got him on board.
Where did he come from? Did he move to Wexford to be?
No, he lived in Wexford.
Fantastic.
He lived in Wexford, yeah. We worked together in Wexford.
Okay.
And but what it meant was, because at this stage then, he was COO, so I had to have the title of CEO just to make sure I was, the top man. Very important. So we went from a relationship where he used to be my boss and suddenly I was his boss. And later on when we sold the company, he was appointed CEO and I was reporting into him for a while, but then he was reporting to me on the board because I was on the board at that stage. But that you only get away with those weird setups for a while.
Yes.
If you know each other well.
Yes.
It went okay for a couple of years, but you can't do that forever. But
so what was Geraldine's title at this stage then?
When he came on board, she was marketing manager.
Yes.
At that stage, and then she left soon after that.
Okay.
And we hired another marketing person. So
the other thing I want to ask you about is finances, because finances, again, you'd done a little bit of studying in the area. Were you in control of the financial governance of the organisation at this stage?
Yeah. Now the company was reasonably profitable from quite early on, so finances is not an issue then.
Okay.
It's quite,
What a nice situation to be in.
Oh, and in hindsight, that we had an easy business model because everyone paid up front. If you wanted the ad on the website, you had to pay. It wasn't, pay afterward. We never had to chase any invoices. We never had to do any of that. And all that was automatic. It was all online. It just came into the account. So when I say finances, it was just to make sure that we weren't overspending or that we had enough money in the bank.
And basically, it was the dream business.
Oh, it was so handy. And no stock.
So handy. Understatement of the century.
Well, obviously it didn't feel like it at the time.
Yeah.
But, after DoneDeal, I've been involved in a few other businesses that have inventory and stock and they have to order stuff 6 months in advance.
Friction points all over the place.
This is impossible. How do you run a business like this? It's much easier when you don't have any stock, you don't own anything, you just, and people pay up front.
You didn't even realise how lucky you guys were at the time.
You don't at the time, no. You have no idea.
Amazing. There must have been some really funny moments.
Loads, yeah, of course. The one is actually related to stock. We're sitting in our little office in Wexford, and there's 4 or 5 of us in the company. We're hide away because we didn't want anyone to know where our office was because all our interaction should be on the website. We didn't want the people in the office. So we had no signs outside or anything saying where the office is, and we had no receptionist because there was no one ever coming to the company. So we're sitting there working away, and suddenly these two ladies walk in through the door. And I mean, we just sit, it's like the door here, and we sit here programming, and they start looking around the office, and they start looking. We have a few press clips on the wall there, and I look at them. I go, "Sorry, can I help you?" And they look over to me. Yeah. We're here to see the Jeeps. They thought we had all those very good. I think at the time we had 5,000 cars on the website. They thought we had all those cars somewhere stashed out in the back, in the warehouse, and that was, to me, was open up my eyes to, okay, this is.
You've built something
Yeah.
that has so much more optical power than you had even thought.
Obviously, people felt that it was part of DoneDeal. It was actually very flattering that people felt this is DoneDeal. They are that size that they can actually store 5,000 cars.
Amazing.
And at the time, we had an office of 45 square meters or something. That was it.
So in a way, your model of not holding any stock was the precursor of Uber and.
Yeah, sure. They're all built around the same
Airbnb.
Same idea that
Absolutely.
just be the middleman,
Yeah.
making the connections.
Amazing.
And it's
So
easy to scale.
I know you sold a few houses in your time. Plane.
We had a plane on the website on one stage. We got an email, like we had a number of sections on the website where you put stuff in. So furniture, cars, cameras, all this kind of stuff.
So preloaded categories.
Yeah, exactly. And we grew those categories as the website grew. And one day we get an email from a lady, and she says, I'm trying to sell my plane, but I can't find the plane category. And we go, yeah, okay, sorry, we don't have a plane category yet.
But we're working on it.
Yeah, because we set that up once we have a number of planes, but so if you don't mind, we'll give you a free voucher, because we figured it's no way she's going to sell a plane on DoneDeal. So we'll give you a free voucher here. You can put it up in the other category. And I said, oh, sure, I'll do that. She put it up on the site, and we thought it was the greatest thing ever to see a plane on the website, And then a couple of weeks later, she emails us and she says, thanks very much, I sold the plane. I love it, the website. And we go, Jesus, this is brilliant. But we still can't have a plane section because the plane sold too quick. We need to have 5 or 6 planes before. So I don't think there's still a plane section on the website.
That's very funny.
But,
but anything can live in other.
Yeah. and it actually sells. To me, that was amazing. Like, to be able to sell a plane.
That is amazing.
It's weird feeling. We had a few other weird stuff on the website. At one stage, we had life-size statues of the Blues Brothers. So someone had 2 life-size statues, and the photos in their home, in their living room. I was going, I'd love to have that in my living room.
What were you tempted by? There have to have been things along the way.
I was very tempted on that, but they were up in the north, so it was just too far to go and get them, and we lived in a very small house at the time. So I don't think Geraldine would have been too impressed.
Hilarious.
But what I got, just
That is brilliant.
You get all these, weird and wonderful things, and one section that is amazing is the farming section. It's always done very well, and I guess this farming psyche is very much about wheeling and dealing and reusing stuff, in fairness, and buying second hand and get the most out of things. So it's always a very interesting section. So when you go in there, you see tools there, and I look at them and I go, I have no idea what that tool is doing.
But I really want it.
It looks really cool. Big machinery,
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I guess any founder is ultimately a salesperson. They have to be able to sell their idea. They have to be able to sell their service or product. In your time, what are the key tips that you have seen, either that you've developed yourself or that you've seen people develop on the platform for selling?
Well, if I look at what works on DoneDeal, it's really about, one, you only have a little bit of space. You have this space on a web page. So the biggest thing is photos. It's you can write all this text about what the sofa has or the car, especially cars. They get this long line of loads of stuff that the car has. It has alloys wheels and blah blah blah. No one really.
Show me the car.
Yeah, it's too much to read. So it's really about the focus is on the pictures. Take really good pictures, and if you think about it, then again about a car, what do people do when they go and look at a car? If they look at it in real life, well, they sit in. So they sit in, feel the steering wheel. They look at the wheels. They might actually kick the wheels. No one knows why they're supposed to, but everyone seems to do it. So when you when you're trying to sell that car, you should do the same photos. You should have photos of the wheels, close up.
A kickable wheel.
Yeah.
Yes.
You should have photos of the steering wheel. You should have photos of everywhere where people would normally be nosy and stick their head in, under the bonnet.
Fantastic.
Have a photo of it, because all that makes them feel that now I've actually seen the car. It's just as good as if I've actually been there to touch it myself. And the people can actually buy things then without having to go and see it.
And so would it be fair to say that a lot of the same principles need to be used when you're preparing your own business for selling?
It's about understanding what do these people want to know about my business, and then show them that. So because if you try to hide it, it gets very obvious very, very quickly.
Absolutely. And we'll come to that in a little bit more detail. I'd love to know at what point you began to prepare the business for sale.
Part of it was always, when we started the business, we'd seen the success the similar website I had in Sweden. So we knew if we were lucky, it could.
And they had sold?
They had sold, yeah.
Yes.
We knew there could be a certain size of business that it could be very, very attractive business. We knew it was likely that we were going to be approached by people because we'd seen that happen in other countries. But one thing we said from day one, we said it feels a bit weird to build a business to sell. But we said, well, let's build a business that we might not sell it, but let's build a sellable business. So that changed our mindset a little bit, because in a sellable business, if we were to sell the business ever, we needed to have a team that took over after us. You talk about these key person. You can't have, the business can't depend on me, because if I sell the business and I leave and the business falls apart, no one wants to buy that business. So that was part maybe of hiring the CEO very early on. We said we have to build a management team. That doesn't
extract yourself.
Yeah, doesn't mean that we sell the business. It might mean that we still own the business, but we sit on a beach in Spain owning the business, and we don't actually work in the business so much. So that's what I mean by building a sellable business. Doesn't mean that you sell it, but it means that you might be able to extract yourself from the daily running of it. And
again, that shows such incredible foresight that you probably take for granted, but it is one of the biggest challenges for business owners.
You might call it foresight. I call it being lazy.
I don't think you're lazy. I think you like life. That's a different thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
Absolutely.
But yeah. So I mean, there was always in our psyche that we were building a business that could stand on its own feet. And then you get too busy growing the business that you don't really think about it. We got approached a little bit by some Irish media companies and stuff that were a bit interested, but we weren't at the stage at the time. We had a few discussions just to get our heads around. We realized very quickly this wasn't suitable for us at the time. We were still growing too much and too focused on that. And then suddenly one day we get a call from Schibsted. It's a Norwegian media company with a weird name. They're called Schibsted, but they had actually owned that Swedish website.
Interesting.
And they rang. They said they wanted to meet for a coffee, and it felt a bit weird in that, I mean, we'd basically stolen their ID from Sweden, moved it to Ireland, set it up, and now we were going to try to potentially sell it back to them. It felt something felt a bit weird there, but
it feels okay from this side of the table.
It was okay as well, but what happened then as well was it was a bit weird. So we met up with these guys, and they were very friendly and very approachable, very
confrontational.
Yes, that's the word. We met over coffee, and it was just a chat. But you very quickly realised because they ran similar websites in 20 other countries. They know this space very much in great detail. So there was times when they said to me that, okay, you have so many ads in this section. That probably means that you have blah 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 this and blah 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 over here. And I go, oh yeah, I think that sounds about right. I had no idea. We'd never looked at these numbers. We looked at some of the top numbers, And
so they had all the deep dive data around everything that was happening.
Yeah, and you go back to the office and you say, let's look at these numbers, and they were spot on.
Wow.
So they knew, it was almost like they knew our business better than we did.
Wow.
So that was a bit daunting.
And what was the timeline around that? When did that phone call and that cup of coffee happen?
I think that was maybe March or April 2011.
And just let us know then, when did the EOI program happen for you?
That was 2010. That was a year before. So
and how impactful was that then in terms of preparing you for what came the year after?
I think, well, there's two parts to it. One, mentally, being part of the EOI program was very flattering to be invited to. You know, suddenly you felt, you meet all these other real business people, who have actually built big business. Our company was still 6 employees, I think, at the time. So we were a very small business, and in my mind, a tiny little operation. Now,
a very small business which had a turnover of 4.5 billion at one point. Is that right?
Well, that's the items that were
Tiny little.
That's not our turnover.
Yes.
That's all the stuff that was sold on the website. Yeah.
But that is phenomenal. It's
sold
funny
stuff
because
for 4 billion. Yeah.
You spoke at the very start about metrics for biggest.
Yeah.
And they're not always the headcount, right? And I think that's a mistake that people make. The success of your business is around its effectiveness, and it did what it did really, really well, and does what it does really, really well without friction. That's a beautiful thing.
Thank you. Yeah, to me, it's very flattering that 600,000 people in Ireland go onto DoneDeal every day. 600,000 people every single day go onto the website and use it and enjoy it and look at and buy and sell stuff on it. And maybe that number is probably higher now, but that's when we were leaving.
And yet, you're humbled by EOI calling and saying, come on the programme.
Yeah, well, at the time we didn't have quite those numbers either. So, but it was a stamp of approval from someone outside that, suddenly it felt like we're doing something right. So I think that helped with the mindset when you go into the negotiations with any other party, that you feel that, actually someone else has given the stamp of approval that helps you in the outset of the negotiations. The other part of it was, through the EOI, you get a huge network of people who are in different stages of business, and a lot of them have gone through exactly the same thing of selling their business, setting up a business, selling the business, and they're out on the other side. And suddenly you have this network of people that I could chat to and say, well, how did you handle this? What happened when you sold your business? What do you do after? Because people forget that, but selling a business is not only about selling the business. It's not about numbers for whatever you can get for the company. It's about what happens to the team and the office when you leave? Because I've been working with these people for years, sitting right next to them. So you want to make sure that whatever happens, that the office isn't closed and moved to Dublin or something like that happens. And the other part is, what happens to me when I'm not in DoneDeal anymore? Like I was used to walking around in Wexford, and a lot of people would call me Mr. DoneDeal, which is very flattering. But then, if we sell the business, who am I then? I'm nobody,
Fred, I don't think anybody could ever say that except you. What happens to the business owner when the business is sold?
Yeah, a big part of that, a big relief for me was when I realised that even though I sell the business, I'm always the founder of DoneDeal. And that was a huge part to me, because I felt that I'm not necessarily losing DoneDeal when we sell it. I'm still always going to be part of DoneDeal. I can always call myself founder of DoneDeal. It doesn't matter what happens to the business. So that was a big part of my own identity. And then the next question is, well, what do I do when I'm not going into the DoneDeal office? And in hindsight, I probably did the wrong thing, because the deal we did with Sheepstead was I was phasing out over a couple of years. And meanwhile, then I started to phase into other businesses. So I started investing in a few other companies, to a few other websites. I started working on their boards, getting a bit of active involvement in them. And I never really had a break after selling the business. And in hindsight, when I've spoken to other people, I've realized that some people, they sell the business and they take a year off, they go sailing around the world or do something. And I think that is probably, in hindsight, that's a good thing to do, because it's good for your head. Because otherwise, I ended up investing in businesses that were kind of similar to DoneDeal. It wasn't a really clean break. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't it wasn't distinct that this is then and this is now. So I found myself was an active investor in 4 companies and spent all my time with this. And they were amazing companies, amazing products.
Are you still involved in them?
I phased out of most of them now. I've sold most of them last year. But they were all very interesting, but they were all over the place. Some were very new, some were very in retail, some were online only, some were... So there was no synergy between them. So that's why last year we decided, let's phase out of these, exit as many as possible, and then take a year. So this year I'm actually on a gap year.
Fantastic.
I'm doing my best to do as little as possible work-wise. We'll see how long that lasts, but definitely until after the summer I won't be getting involved in anything new. And a big part of that is to create that headspace and let just things simmer around in the background and see what pops out. And then hopefully at the end of this year, I'll have a better plan for, okay, if I invest, what do I go after? Do I go for really startup or more mature companies? Is there a certain industry? There has to be something that binds things together. Otherwise, it's not fair. Like, it's great for me, but it's a hobby. If it's all scattered over the place, it's not fair for the companies that I invest in, because I can't bring stuff to them because there's no synergy between the other companies I've invested in.
So what is it that makes you tick? What brings you to that place where you feel, yes, this is the best of me?
Well, a big part of that is this year is about finding that out, to put that in, because it's very skewed towards DoneDeal, my experience with DoneDeal and my experience with the investments. So part of that is to free up the time to let's see what simmers up. But I've always loved this magic merger of technology versus reality, technology versus people. It's so easy as a techie to just get focused on the techie stuff. But the magic with technology happens when everyone can use it. And so I do believe there'd be something around that part where how do you bring more technology to people in a way that people don't get afraid by the technology? Because a lot of technology can be very
inaccessible.
Yeah, scary to use. You can see, like when I see my mother sometimes using the computer, it's always like she's afraid of pushing the button, and that's an awful feeling.
Yeah.
But if technology can be more accessible, it can enable so much more.
I think I know the answer to this question, but it is a question that I like to ask. What made DoneDeal a success?
I think it was a simplicity. From day one, we had that mother-in-law test that it has to be usable by everyone. And I think that made it. I remember we got an email from a person in the early days, and they said, I love your website. I only use 2 websites. I use my bank, big online bank, because I have to, and I use your website because I know how to. And to me, that really summed up the great feeling of we've done something right with this website, because someone who doesn't dare to use any other website dares to use our website, and they end up using it a lot then because they love it. So to me, that was a great moment.
Fred Karlsson, thank you so much for your time and your beautiful conversation. I'm really excited to see what comes out of
Me too.
this time of fertility that you've given yourself.
Can't wait to see what happens.
One thing's for sure, you're not going to sit in your hands. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Joe's Architects of Business in partnership with EY Entrepreneur of the Year. Thanks to everybody at Maximum Studios and of course to my guest, Fred Karlsson. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to get a brand new episode of this fabulous show into your feed for free every fortnight. I'm Sonya Lennon. Thanks for listening and talk soon.